Hey, good night.
Good night. How is
Good night,
everything going?
everyone. Fine, thanks. And you?
Everything is going good. Thank you so much. Okay, so today we have a deeper scenario because we have one of my favorite topics. So we need to start right now. I don't
Hey,
know.
good night.
Good night. I don't know why some of your colleagues are not here, but we will start as soon as possible. We will wait 1 minute more. Meanwhile, Angie get connected again. Perfect. So as I was telling you, today we will start with a topic that is so important for me because it's where I have more experience and basically I'm in love with this area. If you want to do some questions, Mariana, good night. Good night, welcome. I was telling that this is one of my favorite topics in the world. So is the one where I have more experience related and basically was my job for years. So if you want to make some question about, feel you free. Today we will start with environmental law. So please confirm if you are seeing my screen right now. I will put it bigger, bigger, perfect, here. And you can see that sometimes I talk with British accent and sometimes with American. Viga and bigger. Or water always happens with water. Sometimes when I don't think so much about, it's like, give me the water, please. And it's water if I'm talking or trying to use the American accent. So sometimes it's hard for me. So the most important thing when we are talking about environmental law is what does it mean, right? Yesterday in our speaking call, we kind of tried to show different scenarios where we can find it. But basically, this is one of the most important ones because it's so related with our lifestyle, with the healthy lifestyle that we can have. So we can have concept that is used by US, and we have means that any or all federal, but in our nations, we can just talk about the laws, state, local, and foreign statutes, laws, regulations, ordinances, rules, judgments, orders, decrees, permits, concessions, grants, franchises, franquicias. Esta es una palabrita nueva que no hemos visto antes. Sí, no hemos visto antes, creo. Estoy 90% segura que no lo hemos visto. Entonces es importante y por eso lo coloqué en español para que lo recordemos. Licenses, agreements or governmental restrictions relating with pollution and the protection of environment to or the release of any materials into the environment, including those related to, here is so important, hazardous substances or wasted. Wasted is the most typical way that we can call it, and is especially or commonly used for solid, for all the, por todos los residuos sólidos. ¿Sí? Es la mejor manera que lo podemos traducir, waste. Then we have trash, but it's like more informal. So if we are talking in a formal environment, we should use wasted. Air emissions and discharges to waste or public systems. We need to understand that we have a huge factory of wastes around the world. Basically, in our little town, the minimum thing that we need to ensure is like the health system. We need to try to find how a family can get the essentials. We will talk about all the public services, gas, water, light, energy, etc. But in any family, we will always generate wastes. And I need that you just think a little bit like how much waste your family create weekly or monthly or like every year. It's huge. And we are so many. So in all the basic activities that we have daily, we always will create a waste. And this is just one problem, but we can also have pollution, contamination, water contamination. We are we have this problem with oil and not renewable energies. Then we have, it's so easy in any aspect about life. If you are working for companies, you have factories, the factories can generate like some wastes. Even if you are talking about travel or do some kind of tourism, you are also contamination because creating contamination, because when you take an airplane, this is like against or helping to these um, greenhouse effect, ¿verdad? So we have huge responsibility, not just with ourselves and with the future, about to preserve what we have right now and try to make something to don't make it worse. That doesn't mean that just if you want to have kids, you need to get worried about this topic. But even if sometimes I just believe that I never will become a mom, but we belong to a community, so we need to think in that position. But if we start to solve it or to analyze this topic from the point of view of law, we will discover that you can work as a consultant in a lot of scenarios. If you are working, like in the case of Mariana, if you are like so related with corporative sector, at some point you will need to deal with these kind of things, just with packaging. You need to be online with all the rules in the where the factory is like belonging. Then if we are working for the government, we can suggest some public policies or apply them or oversee it, that everything is like going into the ruling process. So what I am trying to do here with this concept is try to give you all the verbs and all the different scenarios where we can get related. Maybe as a consultant, maybe for the town, maybe for the legislation, maybe for the whole government, maybe in an international forum, maybe for an agencies, for a non-governmental organization, for refugees. We have like other little area of environmental law that is like all the animal rights. So exist like a lot of environmentalists that are defending this kind of causes. So it's like really huge, the wide scope where we can see these kind of topics, because basically, or in our daily life, when you think about, since you wake up, even with your breath, with your own breath, you are creating contamination, right? Until you, since you wake up until you go to sleep, you are just a machine that generates wastes. Everything that you eat, that you drink, everything that you do, because if you are driving, you are creating some wastes. If you go to dance, any activity that you want to put in your mind, you are creating some wastes or some contamination. So it's a way of thinking, but also how to help to change the decision to affect us, or the decisions that affect us. Is related also about how to find and solve troubles. And it's not necessarily means that if you are worried about these kind of things, you are an environmentalist. No, just you are a conscious person. That's it. We have some ruling that we will see it like really fast. The first one is valuing the environment but protecting it. The law of environmental problems in a local way, environmental law, and other problems that can be global as a climate change, right? Depending of the way that you want to analyze it, you're going to start to moving in different wide scopes. The environmental problems are complex because we are complex. This is something that we need to keep in mind always. If I am trying to do a huge consultant process for a huge factory or multinational company, I need to understand that maybe reducing some aspects of the production will have a different consequences, but can, like everything is related, so related, and also the consequences can be interchangeably. So maybe if I move a little bit of, I don't know, of the profit, or if I change some material to other, maybe I can move some of the consequences, but I always will have a consequence. I always will have consequences about any act that we do. And this is something that the huge companies invest a lot of money to try to get the best advice. That is the way from the, or that is the reason why a lot of companies around the world change their factories or moves around different countries, because like the politicians or across the policies, the public policies, they can have different kind of results. If they are working in India, they have some regulations, but if they come to work to Argentina, they have, of course, that other one. And depends of that is deeply connected with the economy of a country. So even if you are working for the public sector, but not to this specific arena, the basic example, labor law. Why the people is moving to work to India or to create all the manufacture in India or Asia? Because they have their handmade work so cheap, right? And that, of course, that affects the economy. So everything is interrelated, and you need to keep that in mind also. We have different frameworks. In Latin America, we have a lot of international treaties that oversees some situations. But when we need to start like a litigation process, we need to go to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Then we can have some advices from the commission that is in Washington, but it's really hard that you find protection just with some measures that they can take. In the most of the times, we will have the decision of international courts that will support a company, organization, citizens, or indigenous communities, animals, or some specific group of victims. When we're talking about environmental law in an international framework, the huge or the most important consequence or big consequence about a final resolution or a decision or sentence that belongs to an international court will be materialized by indemnization and by monetary compensation. Even if some of the damages cannot be reversible. So I will show you some of the examples. When we were in Colombia having the most horrifying period about violence, one of the acts that always do the FARC was put oil on rivers and affects like a lot of communities and citizens and towns and cities and etc. But then at the end of the day, even if some of the victims can have a monetary and compensation, or it can kind of solve the problem, because imagine that they cannot fish anymore, all the animals died, and everything that can be the result of put oil in a river. The reality is that consequences, when we're talking about environment, will never be reversible. With all the money in the world, it will be so expensive to change one of these terrific acts, right? And this is hard. I wish that Jamil be here, because he studied this so deeply. And one of my articles, one of the first articles that I published when I was at the university was about the contamination that exists in the air, right? Like the micro pollution, and how it's deeply connected with cancer and with a lot of health problems that is not happening instantly, but is happening with time. And the people never associate. But in Colombia, I cannot remember the specific numbers, but something like in Colombia, you can have some health on the environment with, the example, 2 levels of these microparticles in your air, and then we were like at 16 or something. So it's impossible that you can have a healthy lifestyle if you cannot have poor air. How you can change, how you can invest a lot of money or create a lot of programs from the government or for your community for clean the air. No, you need to start to plant trees and create a whole green system and implement, and that takes years. And then maybe the good consequences or the different consequences can arrive to our future generations, but that I will change the air that I am breathing now. It's like really, really hard. We have 100 frameworks. If we had 100 situations, we will have 100 frameworks where we can work. And this, I forget the R, sorry. Here is works, frameworks. When we are talking about nations, we have different legal obligations depending on the treaties that we accept and we ratify. And here we have global context that is really hard because, as you know, and I was discussing this with some of you yesterday, how is possible that some of the first world countries create the half of the contamination that the other worldwide countries create? And how we as an international community, how we cannot be against that kind of things, right? And it's just because the system, right? Because it's capitalism. And I don't know if you listen about the problems that now is happening with fast fashion. Let me know if some of you listen about it. And I welcome. And I don't know if Daniel is having any problems with your camera today. Let me know, because I'm seeing that you haven't turned it off your camera. I don't know.
Teacher, do you listen me?
Yes, I'm listening to you.
Teacher, I'm here, but I don't have too much energy on my cell phone, and I don't have a computer here, so I have
Okay.
to turn off my camera.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, no
Uh,
worries. Perfect.
teacher, I'm sorry I'm late because I am in my job
Yeah.
and I have other a reunion. I'm sorry.
A meeting. A meeting.
Yes, a meeting.
Perfect. No, no worries. It's okay.
Okay.
So we are talking about environmental law, just for putting you in context, and I will then please ask you that you check the video that is in YouTube. But basically, we are discussing why we are studying this, why we should analyze different frameworks, and when you arrive, we are talking about the legal obligations that has some countries around the world. Okay, so the most typical example that we can get is America against or versus the whole world, right? The effects and the pollution, and especially specific the air pollution, because for all the factoring process that they have inside of the country, makes that they are one of the most like focused for contamination worldwide. They are creating like the 48% was the last time that I read an article related. Different contexts because they produce different. You cannot compare how you work with livestock market. Livestock market, I guess that we never saw that. Or I guess maybe when we talk about agriculture, I will put it on the chat. I, you know what it means? livestock? No? None of you? Livestock market es ganadería o el mercado de la ganadería. ¿Sí? Livestock. So when we are talking about these kind of scenarios, of course that we cannot compare how America produce, how America create this huge business against the other context that we can get. Brazil, how Brazil manage their livestock market. So different that Bolivia do it, for example. In Sahama, that is one of the highest places in Bolivia, in the border between Chile and Bolivia. That is their life, and it's incredible how they do it in a handmade way. It's incredible how they create the whole system. Give me a second, sorry. Sorry, so sorry that I interrupt this session. It's something so important. Okay, what I was saying before this, give me a second. Yeah, that we cannot compare how Brazil create the whole business about livestock market and Bolivia, that is the case in Sahama that I was telling you before. They have they live in a really high altitude, but they respect so much the life. I cannot, just because I live it, but they have not numbers. They are not numbers. They are kind of part of the family because they live with them. And they use it, of course, but the first or the top list about how they manage and deal with these different businesses is not about getting rich. That is different what is happening in this case of Brazil, right? They are just using fires for create the market because they need to affect in a way the lands just for have more and more cows, okay? And then we have the political issues. I think so bad. Issues, sorry, it's like bad type. What about the political issues? How we can deal with different perspectives and the decisions that they have on power, right? This is something that we need to discuss also. We are related with all these political scenarios because of course that the people think different, but they, in the most of the cases, all the politicians has businesses and they try to help them or try to benefit themselves with this kind of uses, right? Happens a lot of in Colombia. So, for example, they are working with real estate. You know what is real estate? Lo hemos visto, ¿verdad? Me voy a poner a llorar. ¿No hemos visto qué es real estate?
I can't remember now, teacher.
Es todo este derecho o inmobiliario, todo este derecho como que corresponde a los bienes inmuebles, ¿verdad? Compra, venta, renta, bla. Entonces, so in Colombia, we have like a lot of cases where politicians are getting so related and involved with real estate that they start to change some articles and they start to, put their hands in a really dirty way for try to benefit themselves or benefit their family or benefit. So when we are talking about political issues, it's not just about how the laws born or how the public policies are applied in a different context. We are talking about all the interests and economical interests that are related with political issues, then with different contexts and with different legal obligations. Other example, like 5 years ago, my ex-president getting like related in a process where they are trying just because of their own interest, they were trying to unprotect some indigenous communities area to try to create a resort in front of the beach because they have like an amazing view and you have like the mountains and also the sea, but also it's a tropical zone. So it was like so privileged. So they try to create the whole strategy for unprotect this area and then buy it in a different prices, because when you are protected, you cannot buy it. You cannot do any kind of business with these lands. And of course, that if we saw this kind of a scenario from an international wide scope, we are unprotected some indigenous communities and they are getting affected. But the thing is how they don't have a lot of context or knowledge. Sometimes the same government manipulate them about give them other kind of benefits if they renounce to their own rights. So you need to be, depending of you are working, of course, but in my case, you need to be so neutral, but also you need to start to not work with government, but not also work with communities. You need to be an agent, like as a consultant. Okay? Then we have something that is called environmental justice. Environmental justice means it's this area of law that is making sure that final resolutions with equity. With equity. Okay? It's talking about all the communities, all the rights or the rivers and all the lands. And maybe 1 year or 1 year and a half ago, in Costa Rica, in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, they create a whole decision about how the international responsibility of all the states need to make sure that the people will respect the river rights or the water rights or the ocean rights. So they start to give a different character and they start to create new systems of protection, but also to implement and to add some specific clauses to the treaties that already exist. And now we can discuss that international forums that the lands and rivers, oceans, they can be protected by international law and defending their rights, you know? So it's like a subject of law, es un sujeto de derecho. Y eso es algo que ha cambiado y que cambió muy recientemente. Yo les voy a mandar el comunicado de prensa. Pero regálenme un segundo que tengo un asunto súper importante. So now we can say that they are subjects of law. Ellos son sujetos de derecho, ¿verdad? Que es algo que hace 20 años no era posible. No es posible que la tierra sea sujeto de derecho, ¿verdad? Ahora sí. And we start to have some international decisions and also in Europe about the judges are trying to protect in an international arena the rights of the earth. Okay, we have different points of view here, and when we start to talk about these kind of theses and about these kind of protections, some professors in different universities start to discuss that wasn't possible because they are not alive. They are like they don't have some specific elements to be subjects of law that the humans have, that even the animals have. So about how to solve the problem, because of all the interests are interrelated, and we have all the positions on a discussion, of course, that are legitimate. And you have a role of protection if you are working for the government, but also you can have a role of discussion if you are belonging to some agents that are trying to protect the rights. But sometimes you cannot expose your point of view just because the people that is listening or that are listening to you are not ready for it. And this is the specific example what about how or what happens when we deal in a process, in a judicial process with an indigenous communities. Because it's no way that we understand what a specific sacred valley means for a community, even if we don't belong to them. And always start to be like a joke. And I'm talking and I'm like showing you this because I saw it with my own eyes. It's really hard that you protect something that you didn't know. It's really hard that you protect something or a place or someone that you are not related, that you of course that doesn't know it, and that you doesn't live it. And the lawyers that born in these kind of organizations or in this kind of indigenous communities are not ready for fight against the whole entire system. Y esto lo voy a decir en español porque fue un caso que nosotros tuvimos. Y es, en un caso, la Procuraduría mencionaba que cómo era posible que estos escenarios sagrados estuvieran siendo como defendidos por personas que no pertenecían a la comunidad. Pues claro que la comunidad no tiene cómo defenderlos, que no tiene los estándares y no tiene, suena muy triste, pero es así, no tiene cómo defenderse ante el sistema, ¿verdad? Porque solamente ellos saben lo que significa la roca, lo que significa esa afluente de agua en su contexto. Y nosotros, por más de que seamos los abogados, nunca vamos a poder entenderlo y comprenderlo tampoco. Así que, depending on the point of view that we are analyzing, can result so hard to try to defend something where you not belong to them, right? Because you will never know what this really, really means. And sometimes, just because they are so manipulated, they believe that the government or all the government promises can be real because they are innocent, right? They don't have any kind of connections with any technology. That is like a really hard scenarios. We are having like 102 groups, like ethnical groups, and I know that Bolivia like have like more identity or ethnical languages also, and we have like a huge and terrible diversification, but the reality is that with time we are losing all the languages, we are losing all the culture, right? And what is the paper or what is the role that we can manage or deal in these cases? We need to think about that, right? What are the principles of tort law, civil law, and criminal law are here in this environmental issue? Why? Why tort law, while civil law and criminal law? Maybe some of you guys are never loved or never be related or be fans or criminal law, or maybe from the private principles, you don't like it too much, or maybe you love it in the case of Mariana, or in the case of Daniel, I guess that you are so related in these topics. But I guess that this area is one that can have complex context, and we have the same principles, but also it's so easy to adopt the other areas of law. In any kind of cases where are an NGO or a non-governmental organization related against the government or against the state or against the town, and they are defending some victims, we are using the same responsibility proceedings that we use in a private case with tort law. Do you remember what means tort law, right? Perfect. But also all the civil law principles about contracts when we are, for example, having concessions between indigenous communities and some private sector, a factory or mine, mina, o minas o extracciones. And when we are having this kind of contracts, we are using the same principles of civil law, but under international standards of human rights. And when this goes wrong, we are not talking not just about indemnization or the civil consequences. We can talk also about criminal ones. Because if you exceed all your movements in an extraction, for example, and you create the whole contamination for a river, the result of that is maybe create the extinctions of a community. And that is also object of punishment in an international standard. The court, the International Court of Justice can be against the country that allow this kind of behavior. For that reason, they can have always, or they need human rights watchers. They need people that can confirm that everything is going in a ruling process. And if they are affecting the environment, is like under the risk that is previsible. Está debajo del riesgo, que es previsible, que está protegido, que los riesgos que se están tomando de una u otra manera están controlados. Y que si llegase a fallar, we have something that is called insurance. We have insurance. Tenemos seguros o reaseguros, ¿verdad? Esto pasa muchísimo en el sector extractivo, o en el sector minero o el minero energético. ¿De acuerdo? We are talking about the mines and all these energy sector. We have the specific clauses for insurance. And they try to respect the rights of different communities. I put here some of the problems. Hello, Jamil, good night. This is not time. Almost 15 minutes for finish. Hello? I would please ask you that you be more punctual, please. Okay, so some of the problems that we have in these cases, just as an explanation and an example, and I want that you choose one for our next speaking call. We have air pollution, water quality, food safety, that we discussed this in agricultural law, the loss of biodiversity, climate change, access to minerals, and new developments. This is a course that if you have time and you are really interested by this topic, that maybe is the case of one of you. This is topic that is exposed by Yale University and is called like course principles and strategies in environmental law. It's in 2010, and it's online, and it's like the access to the whole lesson is on YouTube and takes like 2 hours, and it's amazing because the professor is just amazing. So if you want, I can send you the link, and you can check the lesson when you have time if you want. And what I want with this activity is that you can select one, and we will create some essay. You know what means essay? Essay, ensayo. I want that you type, I want that you create, I want that you write. And my idea is that we just do it in a page, just one page, like normal size, and not something so big or just so small. But I want that you try to type your own opinion and also see how are you writing in English. But from the point of view of a lawyer, of course. I need to know your opinion about food safety problems in Africa if you want. But what is the perspective of a lawyer? What can a lawyer tell us about food safety or about the loss of biodiversity? So that means that you will implement in your essay some international scenarios with treaties or some conventions, but also the reality, and following the basic rules of any argument: general, particular, and the conclusion. What is the general concept of climate change? Okay, what are the conventions that protect it? What are the treaties? Perfect. What is the particular scenario? What is happening in Ecuador in this case? And when we're talking about essays, the most, or about research strategies, you need to check and try to find the most specific that you can, and then you will do like like you will concentrate, or you can focus your attention in a specific topic. It's not just about what is the result of this convention in the whole Ecuador, because maybe your conclusion will never work. But if you put it in your town, you can do it like smaller. Then you can go to an ordinance or to a rule or a specific part of a law. And then the conclusion. In the conclusion, there I want to see your creativity. What are the suggestions that you can do? And it's just not as a citizen. I need that you give me your legal consultant process. What we can change? We need to modify the law. We need to try to check resources for oversee that the law is fulfilled complete. So that will be our next activity. Is everything clear? Do you have some questions? ¿Quieren la versión en español? ¿O está súper claro?
Teacher, for
Clear?
when? For when this is with this essay?
For our next speaking call. That can be tomorrow. I am waiting. Now that you see that I am just moving with my phone, as you know, I'm like soon leaving the country, and I need to take the tests, and I have like tomorrow in Bolivia is like holiday or something.
Yeah,
And I am like kind of rushing with, I need to go to the laboratory and blah, blah, blah. So maybe I will cancel the lesson of tomorrow, but if I will let you know tomorrow. My idea is that you don't do this kind of work in rush, but it's not like it's not an essay for publish it or something. So exists the possibility that you have to present it tomorrow night, but also exists the possibility that we will leave it for the next week. Now, depends on, if it's not possible that I give a view before Tuesday, because I am like rushing. But if you have a lot of things to do, maybe we can discuss and you can present it the next week. I am open. I don't have any problem. So depends of you. If you believe that you have time for send it tomorrow night, perfect for me. But if you want to do it maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, no problem. But if we have the speaking session tomorrow or the speaking call, we will discuss the specific topic that you choose, right? And maybe some advices or maybe some tips. I also have, I don't know if I told you before that in my law firm we have a blog. So you have to, if at some point you are interested in publish it, feel you free to, we can publish in English and it's online. We can like work together in this kind of topics. And yeah, so depends of you guys. If you want to present it the next week, for me it's no problem. For me it doesn't change nothing. But if you can do it for tomorrow, and if we have like our session without any temporary change, we will do it tomorrow. So depends of you.
Okay. And teacher, the essay we will send you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I maybe for the next week.
Yes, I think
And we have more time for
Yeah.
the work in the essay.
¿Qué dicen los demás?
teacher, I think for the next week is okay too.
Perfect. So I will send an screenshot about this. I will do it now because if not, I will forget it. I will send you a picture about the topics that you can choose. And I will confirm you tomorrow morning if we will have lesson tomorrow night or not. If we have lesson tomorrow night, we will like work together. What is the topic that you choose? Maybe some suggestions, because I want that you create a really good document. I don't know if you sometimes write in English or publish something. Will be like a really good exercise for you, because we'll push you to create, to analyze, to use some new vocabulary. You will have Googles and all the tools for do it perfect. And you will present it to me and send it to me on Wednesday. Sounds good for you? Or Friday? I don't want that you rush and I don't want that you suffer, because I know that you are working. So I want that you take the time to do the things good, but also that don't be like annoying, because it's not the way that I like to teach. So on Wednesday or Friday of next week, When? When do you prefer?
For me, it's okay Wednesday. I don't know for the rest.
I agree with Mariana.
Yes, for Wednesday?
Yes, it's okay for Wednesday.
Yes. Entonces vamos a dejarlo así. El escrito tiene que estar entregado en mi correo electrónico el miércoles en la noche. ¿De acuerdo? Yo les voy a mandar el correo. Si mañana tenemos clase, podemos hacer una pequeña revisión acerca del ejercicio. Si no tuviésemos clase, ya nos vamos directamente hasta el miércoles, que ya yo recibo el documento y ya yo me encargo de hacer las correcciones en la revisión y hacer el feedback en la siguiente speaking call. O sea, si el miércoles me los entregan, el viernes yo tengo listo el feedback. Y les confirmo, yo voy a hacer todo lo posible porque mañana tengamos clase, pero no puedo asegurar nada. Yo creo que estoy como 80% de que sí la podemos hacer. Y así terminaríamos nuestra clase de hoy. Este era otro temita, pero ya quedó afuera. We have yeah, we have a couple of minutes more. It's just a suggestion that you try to create a document or an article that you will be glad to read also. So you need to try to call the attention of the one that is reading. And this is like just a strategy that of course you do it in English and Spanish all time, but in English it's quite harder. So it's important to check what is the level of government appropriate the problem, or how the government managed this problem. What is the branch of government to establish some law? What is the access to data or some confidential issues that we can get, for example, in food safety? So try to make it dynamic, right? So do some questions inside of the text. I don't want that you copy and paste some Google or Wikipedia information that you find. No, I want that you create a problematic. It's like a little research essay, como un pequeño ensayo de investigación. Quiero que creen una problemática, una pregunta y que la puedan contestar desde un punto de vista de opinión, pero crítica, si lo quieren ver desde ese punto, o de opinión, apoyo, pero la opinión de un abogado. El único que se me puede desfasar un poquito ahí es Yamil. El único, pero ni siquiera porque se pone al día, porque él estudió, está ingeniería ambiental. Así que tiene de dónde conversar de estos temas. And also, if you are like so interested in these corporative world and economical issues, will be so amazing that you can connect it with some specific consequences for the economical sector and try to find some international standards or try to find new vocabulary that you can apply. An example, preemption es el derecho preferente de compra, ¿verdad? Cuando el gobierno tiene una calidad para ser partícipe o para ser productor de alguna manufactura a nivel nacional. Ese derecho preferente de compra es, a ver, el gobierno, aquí en Bolivia creo que lo tienen con gas o con ¿qué otro término? Sí, básicamente con cualquier producto o recurso natural que provenga de, bueno, de diferentes lugares, pero el Estado es como el principal, la principal cabeza. Entonces, el Estado lo puede negociar, el Estado lo puede cambiar y también es el primero en adquirirlo. Bien sea inversores, por ejemplo, pasa mucho con los bancos también. El derecho preferente de compra en banca de valores cuando el gobierno tiene sus propios bancos, ¿verdad? El derecho preferente de compra de divisas también. Entonces, son factores económicos que sería muy interesante que si les gusta esa área y no les gusta el derecho del medio ambiente, puedan enlazarlo con alguno de los temas que nosotros tenemos. Por ejemplo, minerales o el sector minero energético. Por ejemplo, aquí en Bolivia, les estoy dando solamente ideas para que sea dinámico. Por ejemplo, aquí en Bolivia tienen el Cerro Rico en Potosí. Increíble que lo que está pasando a 10 metros bajo tierra afecte la bolsa de valores en Nueva York, ¿verdad? Que la extracción de un día se ve reflejada en el costo de la plata para X o X periodo de tiempo. Entonces, un factor económico que si lo traemos a nuestra vida real, igual estamos hablando de derecho al medio ambiente. Entonces, no tiene que ser solamente conversar acerca de las consecuencias del cambio climático, no, sino si también lo pueden conectar desde algo que a ustedes les guste. And depending of the case, we can have an administrative discretion. That is different than confidentiality, right? Because confidentiality is a contract and it's always related with commercial and some standards of trade secrets or some specific clauses that identify or that makes that nobody can show or nobody can expose some of the parts of the contract. Always the confidentiality or the most important confidentiality contract that we have worldwide, and that is always the best example, is what are the ingredients of Coke? How is the making process for Coke? It's the huge trade secret. And the whole company creates some different scenarios where nobody that doesn't have the expertise can get access to step by step to create the final product. So it's like the whole IP law. But when we have an administrative discretion, it's different because we have a public agent related. That is what makes the difference. That in confidentiality, in some contracts, we can have people from the government, private sector, agents, etc. But administrative discretion, instantly, I need that you keep this in your mind. Administrative discretion, the result of don't have the standards of administrative discretion will be a chaotical situation, will be like the chaos because of the information, and basically is how we deal with population in different scenarios of our countries. ¿Ok? El ejemplo, los pesticidas en la comida. Si el gobierno no tiene las discreciones administrativas y la manera de disimular esta información, se crea un caos público, ¿verdad? Porque son cosas que sí se tiene el derecho a saber, pero generalmente están camufladas. Lo mismo pasa con el tema, creo que el más avanzado en Latinoamérica hasta el momento, creo que es Chile y Perú, en cuanto a los niveles de azúcares en la comida, en en todo el producto, eso tiene un nombre. En Colombia le decimos comida chatarra, pero
Fast food. Fast
no,
food, ¿no?
no, es como esta procesada, es la comida procesada. Entonces, en Perú, ustedes encuentran las galletas y tienen sellos de advertencia, ¿no? Es como alto en azúcares, alto en sodio, alto en, etcétera. En Colombia no, y están luchando súper duro por tener esa ley. ¿Sí? Entonces, hay información que necesita ser manejada con una discrecionalidad administrativa, con discreción, como un manejo profesional a la información que se está dando, pero sin afectar los derechos de la población. That is the case in Colombia and other countries of Latin America. That we have access to the information because if you take cookies, if you take just a pack of cookies and you put all the information, of course that information is there and you can read it, but read it doesn't mean that you will understand it. So you need to create a basic language that the people understand what is something like high sugar standards or sodium or calories, and the people need to understand that have access to the information. So the same principle is applied in different scenarios. We will imagine about transgenic food and about the seed management. Esto creo que también es importante que lo tengamos, todo el manejo de las semillas, seed management. Some of them is published, but need to be published in a language that all of you and all of us can understand. So some of these aspects is the ones that I wish, like I am giving you some perspective, that you try to implement in this essay. I want that you take your time, that don't take like days doing it, because I want that to be like natural, but also that you try to push yourself to do a really good job or work. Okay? We will leave this topic until here because it's a little bit late right now. I need please that all of you feel the survey that now is turned on. Let me know if are you seeing everything good or not really, because sometimes I having like issues. Voy a colocar ya mismo en el grupo los temas para que los vayan pensando. Voy a mandar una fotico porque si no después no lo hago. Me falta una persona. Entonces, mañana por la mañana les confirmo si tenemos clase o no. Vayan pensando el tema que vamos a discutir mañana. Vayan pensando algunas de las perspectivas o de las ideas que les acabo de dar. Si lo quieren ver desde un factor económico, si lo quieren ver desde un factor tributario, si lo quieren ver desde un factor social, también está súper permitido. Y la otra semana, que ya voy a estar con más calmita y con más tiempo, recibo todos sus mensajes para adelantarnos con las sesiones que han perdido de las speaking calls, ¿cierto? Para no estar corriendo ya lo último, sino hacer las cosas con calmita. Con Yamil me deben, creo que Angie también, Diandra. Entonces ahí nos ponemos al día, puede ser ya un sábado o un lunes, ya cuando ustedes quieran, va a tener más libertad en Colombia. Y bueno, un placer verlos como siempre, descansen y mañana en la mañana confirmamos entonces la sesión de la noche.
Thank you, teacher. Good
Thank
night.
you, good night.
Oh, thank you,
Bye,
teacher.
bye.
Everyone.
Es mejor dejar que las cosas nazcan que todo sea bonito.